Gender and Sexuality Studies with International Affairs in East Asian Languages and Literatures at George Washington University, where she serves as founding co-editor of the Digital Humanities Institute. In 2023, she was named the inaugural recipient of the Popular Culture Association's inaugural Now Roots Legacy Award. At MIT, she co-founded and co-directs the open access Global Shakespeare Digital Performance Archive. And today she will be talking on global Shakespeare's and Heterotopia.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Maria, for bringing me here virtually to Istanbul. I hope you can hear me well. Today I'll be speaking on global Shakespeare as Heterotopia. Where do characters live? What symbolic significance do performance venues have? What are the actors and audiences' stories of arrival? Basically, the concern here is location and space. And how do we all get here today? By asking this question, I'm not interested in modes of transportation, but in terms of our stories of arrival, our arcs, and what did we leave behind, right? We can ask of the characters as well. And what did we bring with us? What kind of packages? So place provides an anchor for dramatic actions. All play texts they exist simultaneously in many dramaturgical constructed localities. At least there's the idea of where the story is set, where it is performed, where the actors and audiences have been, where they are going. The performance space is a mediated social construct that generates site-specific epistemologies. By this, I mean the production and dissemination of location-based meanings. Attending to the significance of place enables closer examination of the question of belonging and the inequities of space and place. Drawing on my forthcoming book, Contemporary Readings in Global Performances of Shakespeare, I would like to offer heterotopia as a new method for the study of global Shakespeare. Heterotopia is a type of space that evokes other cultural spaces. Heterotopia, created by the craft of world-making, anchors, enables, and endorses some characters' transformative experiences and self-discovery. First used by Michel Foucault in a lecture on architecture in 1967 and mentioned again in The Order of Things in 1971, the term heterotopia refers to cultural spaces that are transformative because of their contradictory or trans-historical ideologies. Foucault made a connected argument about utopia and regulatory mechanisms of prism. But here I will focus only on heterotopia as a set of parallel spaces. While the initial context of the notion of heterotopia was architecture and urban design, it is useful in advancing our understanding of otherness. Foucault uses the mirror as a metaphor to explain how heterotopia operates as a virtual space. The mirror, he says, is a placeless place. In the mirror, I see myself there where I am not, in an unreal space that virtually opens up behind the surface. I am over there where I'm not. A sort of shadow that gives my own visibility, that enables me to see myself there where I am absent. End of quote. As technology's representation, the stage and screen work similarly to Foucault's mirror. They project and filter location-specific knowledge of otherness. As Foucault continues, it is also a heterotopia insofar as the mirror does really exist, and that as it exerts on the place I occupy a sort of return effect. It is starting from the mirror that I discover my absence in that place where I am, since I see myself over there. Heterotopia exists in reality as it contains and evokes others spaces. So as a parallel space, it holds up a mirror to other realities. The staging screen exists in reality, like the mirror, but they are a portal. The portal reminds audiences of their absence in the worlds of Hamlet or Macbeth and what have you. Audiences are on one side of the dramatic mirror, seeing shadows of themselves by virtue of their vantage point and not being on the other side of the mirror. Like the Foucauldian mirror, performance functions as a heterotopia, making the place that audiences occupy both distinct from a dramatic space and connected to other worlds within the performance. Heterotopia, or worlds within worlds expand and contract based on their tacit and explicit relationships to other places. The worlds of the characters, actors, and audiences collide, merge, transform one another. Foucault writes that, quote, the heterotopia has the power to juxtapose in a single place several spaces, several emplacements that are in themselves incompatible. He even moves on to touch on theater a tiny bit. The theater brings onto the rectangle of the stage a whole series of places that are alien to one another. An example of heterotopia in global Shakespeare is Makibefo, a Malagasy film adaptation of Macbeth directed by Franco-British Alexander Abela in 2001. Shakespeare's early modern imaginations of medieval Scottish politics are transposed to a 20th century fishing village on the coastal dunes of Madagascar. Macbeth wages battles on the Scottish Highlands, but here Makibefo fights and captures his enemy Kidure on a vast patch of white sand dune. Makibefo and Macbeth, they carry each other's echoes and shadows across cultural and historical spaces, even though Makibefo is not a dialogue-driven film. The Lady Macbeth figure, named Valet Makibefo, wears an intercultural shawl that signifies multiple modern and ancient cultures. Functioning like a toga, her shawl has images of a Colosseum and fleur-de-lis, linking Madagascar to ancient Rome and to the French royal family. So her costume becomes a gateway to other worlds. I'm going to now delve into greater depth in one case study, and this is the Hamlet, directed by the late Yukio Ninagawa. Beyond Japan, it toured to many places, notably many times to London, most recently 2015. Ninagawa's Japanese language high-concept touring production of Hamlet turns the art of theater making inside out through its meta-theatrical conceit, which is essentially heterotopic. The production opens with actor characters warming up, running their lines, touching up on their makeup. They mill around on a set that represents the backstage of a theater where the actor characters both prepare for and stage Hamlet. The two-story set consists of dressing rooms with privacy curtains, complete with lighting mirrors, photographs, and bouquets. The lower level is common dressing area for everyone, while the upper level is reserved for leading actor characters' individual dressing rooms. The backstage space is now upstage. This set doubles as rooms in Elsinore Castle once Hamlet starts. Of particular interest is that dressing rooms are worlds unto themselves, but also points to other worlds once their doors open. Dressing rooms are interstitial or in-between spaces that transform those who pass through them. Actors walk into dressing rooms as 21st century artists and emerge as characters in medieval Denmark. The creation of this backstage as playing space is part of Ninagawa's world-making strategies to both deconstruct and amplify the artifice of performance. The dressing room mirrors themselves are quite Foucauldian in the sense that they are, as devices of heterotopia, juxtaposed self-image with stage image, and visible and invisible worlds. The billowing curtains, thanks to electric fans, add a sense of unease and mystery. Each dressing room seems to be a gateway to unknown worlds. Audiences intrude into actor characters' supposed backstage space, which is connected to Hamlet's fictional world, which in turn resonates with issues of intentionality in communication in audiences' worlds. Some passages in Hamlet are thrown into particular relief by this kind of setting, including Hamlet's railing to Ophelia about her painted face. God hath given you one face, and you make yourself another. Hamlet's assuming an, quote, antique disposition to confront the court is also very relevant here. Also juxtaposing other fictional and real worlds is life-sized Tinado's display in a play within a play scene where Hamlet tests the conscience of his uncle as part of Hamlet's investigative project. Dressed up to look like human-sized dolls, the actors participate in the heterotopia that signifies at once the court in Heian era Japan, rituals of the girls' day in contemporary Japan, Hamlet's Denmark, and the stage within a stage. The audience's attention was redirected from the representational aspect of theatrical realism to the presentational aspect of meta-theatrical narratives in Ninagawa's Heterotopia. This becomes particularly relevant. So as you can see here, they're putting on a play to help Hamlet determine if his uncle is guilty of murdering old Hamlet. So the player king and the player queen descend slowly from the top of the doll tiers to initiate the meta-theatrical performance of the murder of Gonzago. Kensuke Sunahara took on the cross-gender role of the player queen in 2015 in London at the Barbican Center. A folding fan in hand, he played the queen in the kabuki style of Onagata and delivered her lines in the sing-song chanting manner. And they act out the remainder of the play within the play in aggrandized pantomime. The Tina Doll's display serves as a mirror image of three distinct spaces: Claudia's corrupt court, the social space of the fictive murder of Gonzago, which is witnessed by characters within Hamlet, and finally, an ordinary Japanese daily artifact like this. It's a very ordinary daily artifact, just writ large. These doll tiers are now enlarged and populated by life-size dolls, human actors. Okay. So, in conclusion, Heterotopia pushes back against the illusions of Shakespeare's ubiquity and universal meanings by pluralizing the artistic and political positions across and within different communities. Characters who are betwixt and between worlds and alliances, such as Cleopatra, Viola in Twelfth Night, Edmund the Bastard in King Lear, the changeling in A Midsummer Night's Dream, all of them are given new arcs when they are interpreted as mixed race or queer in a new space. Gender roles in Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet are reinvented in new social spaces to tone down misogyny or to propose a feminist interpretation. An example is Mamoru Hoshi's University of Laughs from 2004. As you can see on the screen here, a contemporary Japanese playwright is struggling to write an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet that would be accepted and endorsed by the censor, who is ever so demanding. And so this is supposed to be a comedy parody of writing processes. We also have works like Jongmin An's Fantasy of the Girls from Korea 2016. With it's a high school Romeo and Juliet with a lesbian twist. In the Anglophone sphere, we have Karen Main's Rosalind 2022 and Claire McCarthy's Ophelia 2018. All of these, but not just these are some examples, lend themselves well to heterotopic interpretations. Using a lens of heterotopia, we can pay a lot of attention to the new spaces they are creating and to their transposition of the narrative into new cultural places. So the idea of heterotopia as parallel and overlapping worlds highlights the inherent diversity of global performances and helps us push back against unproductive divisions between the center and the peripheral, even as we seek to understand otherness. Heterotopia is also very important because as someone who studies adaptation, I can tell the pleasure of adaptation really comes from recognizing more than two places at once, right? It's like a fugue. It's two narratives going on at once, very often more than two. Artists may disagree on the meanings of Shakespeare's plays. What they do have in common is their effort to plant new ideas along well-trodden paths and to blaze new trails through long-abandoned territories. Performance styles borrowed from other cultures can help retool some plays for artistic innovation or socially reparative purposes. The heterotopia of intercultural theater and film not only create channels between geographic spaces, but also connect different time periods. On the screen here is a quote from novelist Minaya Mizumura. If we walk through the doors of other languages and cultural spaces more often, we will be blessed with undreamed of landscapes and a more inclusive vision. Heterotopia as method helps us understand rather than flatten cultural otherness and the dynamic interplay between cultures. And I look forward to our discussion and to hearing from many of you. Thank you for attending today's session.
The concept of heterotopia, does that also, it is becoming a question now, that also imply a kind of heterotopia being in two languages or more than two languages at one time, like if you consider language a virtual space, can language be considered a heterotopia?
I believe it can, just like costumes, just like dramaturgical decisions, that all of this go into creating heterotopic spaces, a set of parallel spaces, that contain other spaces, or point toward other spaces. And very often, of course, languages, accents, sounds, choice of musical soundtrack, for example, they all go into this. Or perhaps a director can deliberately create dissonance. They didn't want to produce a coherent coherent world. The Ninagawa I gave as an example is a master in this. He often brings in Japanese no music, traditional Japanese instrumental music, as well as classical Western music all at once. And so you never have a sense of kind of being immersed in one world. I find that itself very productive. So nobody can just sink into their seat and say, I'm comfortable with this, I know everything. So that it's always an in-between space.
Alexa, you spoke about the pleasure of these moving between different spaces. I was just so struck by the just the disruptive possibilities that you both present to us of these works that draw on multiple strands, that invite us into an encounter with Shakespeare that is really not that where hegemonies are unsettled, where they.
Thank you very much. And now we have Subhankar. I will also unmute them.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, great. Thank you. Thank you, Alexa and Professor Delagata, for two astoundingly articulate papers and for the almost forensic clarity and precision with which you sort of deliberated on your subjects. And I have a question for Alexa, if I may. I read Foucault's ideas of heterotopia and heterochronia alongside Gaston Bachelard's Poetics of Space. So, they sort of twinned in my head always. So that phrase about that Bachelard had about the topography of one's intimate being. So I found very resonant when I was sort of parsing Foucault's idea of heterotopia. And it all came back to me when you were glossing your paper and situating that as the theoretical matrix around which you sort of, your observations were constellating, as it were. So my question was, if we could take race and gender and sexuality as two indices around sort of vertiginous indices, if you will, around which these questions can productively coalesce, then how does that tie in with the way you were unpacking the term heterotopic for us, and how does that open up the possibility for performing global and intermediate Shakespeares? And thank you again.
Thank you so much, Subhankar, for this wide-ranging question. Race and gender apparently are part and parcel of any space we create or shut down. I've always regarded gendering and race-making practices or racecraft as interlinked social practices. It is not necessarily just identities, but actually what we do or say at a particular time in a particular space. So it's kind of defining spaces. It's also being defined by the particular spaces, right? You invoked other French theorists, and I would like to take this opportunity to share an open access textbook that I wrote. It's called Screen Shakespeare. As you can see here, screenshakespeare.org. I use this to teach Shakespeare studies, but particularly film adaptations. And in the lesson on set, this chapter on set, I actually unpack some of this is relevant to what you just said. I'll soon turn to anti-racist trans feminist theory. But Henri Lefebvre has really enlightening theory regarding social spaces. We go from le perçu to le conçu to le vécu. So at the fundamental level, you have spaces for everyday activities, like a cafe or the metro, where certain activities take place, like commuting or drinking coffee. And there's representational aspects of those spaces. So this is intimately related to my theory of heterotopia. I've been thinking about the question of locality for some time, right? Dramaturgically created, but also where it's performed. Some venues have important cultural symbolism, kind of. And so representation of those spatial practices are very important. Very often in daily life, so beyond the art, in daily life, you have very condensed form. Like the metro map, it doesn't reflect the reality, right? It's a very simplified version. You may not know that 2 stations are nearby by looking at the map, for example, or the restroom signs. These are just examples, the conçu kind of representational aspect, extrapolation of those spaces and the associated social practices. But most interesting is the last one. So it's your spatial imaginary of particular places. This is especially obvious when you think about very gendered spaces, right? Public restrooms, gay bars. People say these things are a popular spot for heterosexual marriage proposals, romantic vista points. People tag on to spaces racial and gender meanings, not always for the better, but it is something that we recognize. And so when applied to performance analysis, this has profound implication in terms of recognizing otherwise invisible racial race-making or gendering practices that could include, for example, whiteness is very often one of the so-called invisible. It's highly legible, but it's invisible, right? Practices versus minority practices may be highly visible because of differentiation, but they may not always be legible in the sense of being heard or seen or understood. And once you apply this kind of lens, as well as the insight from heterotopia, always recognizing spaces within spaces, or spaces that aspire to lead to another space, we can have a more inclusive and comprehensive view. So it's not just for social justice, but actually for scientific accuracy in terms of having a fuller view of what is going on within the dramatic heterotopic space, but also other spaces that are resonating with it. So thank you, Subhankar, for this question. That is a very, very good one. I hope we can begin to apply this to the study of global Shakespeare. And we've moved on from fidelity model a long time ago, like is this faithful to Shakespeare? But I feel that sometimes new works coming out, we are a little bit stuck in terms of, sure, we don't talk about fidelity. What other models might there be, right? Other than, for example, kind of defaulting to a kind of superficial social justice focus. Thinking about locality and space and all kinds of practices, particularly race and gender. I've been trying to bring critical race theory and transgender studies together. Could be one of the possibilities, kind of a way forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much.